By the end of the week here, we're all pretty much ready to leave behind any Earth-related news, so space. A big win for investor and inventor Elon Musk, and for really anyone hoping to see citizen space travel in their lifetime. His SpaceX, in a historic first, the Falcon 9 rocket was recovered at sea last year, then relaunched successfully and managed a landing on an ocean platform. That's all part of his plan to make spaceflight accessible, at least for those who can pay up.
Yeah, this is a huge day. My mind's blown. I mean, frankly, yeah, I was really quite speechless after it all happened. It's a culmination of a tremendous amount of work by a very talented team. I can't credit to the engineering team and production team at SpaceX enough and the launch team for what they've achieved.
With me now for more on what that actually means for us, Tallene Barr is head of the Space and Research Center at the Fisher Institute, and our economy correspondent, Sam Chester, joining us as well. Great to have you guys. So Sam, let's first start with you. Take us through what this means. Give us some context. A rocket launch, success, what now?
The key thing to remember here, if we look at the timeline of SpaceX, is that when it was created in 2002, one of the key objectives Elon Musk pointed to was he wanted to be able to use reusable rockets, which is what we saw accomplished last night. So that was a key goal. People looking at SpaceX, looking back through the last few years, have been saying, will SpaceX be achievable? Signing deals with NASA, signing deals with the US Air Force. These are all building blocks to make it a viable commercial entity. And again, the fact that he was now able to reach the goal of using reusable rockets, which we can get into is why that's so important on a commercial basis, that means that it can soon become something that can be relevant for consumers and for companies that need to get satellites and whatnot into the space.
So when you say commercial and we're talking costs, how realistic is this actually? Because we normally associate space programs with governments, with NASA.
The cost for the Falcon 9 to get into space, again, there are companies that need to get satellites and whatnot up there. SpaceX says it's over $60 million a launch. They're saying that by reusing rockets, they can get that cost down to around $37 million. That is still high for most companies to use. The key metric going forward is they have to be able to launch more rockets per year. So now that they can reuse the rocket, how many times can they flip that rocket, get it back into condition, so then they can get more launches moving forward? The competition is coming from Amazon on this, competition is coming from Europe, globally, so they have to get out there and get out there first.
Amazon competing to send us to space. Who would have known that this is where we're at? Let's look at the bigger picture for a second. We hear so much talk about driverless cars, about the technology that's going to take us into the future very soon on that front. Is space travel for average citizens something that you think we can expect in our lifetimes?
Of course, but not yet, not in the next few years, but we can see some efforts being made today. In part by Jeff Bezos of Amazon, like was mentioned earlier, and other companies as well, of course, Richard Branson of Virgin Galactic. But we still have to wait and see how this new era will evolve.
What are the biggest challenges, other than just the dollar signs, to overcome in making that happen?
Well, the first and the most important is safety of the crew inside. We all saw what happened to the Israeli Amos 6 communication satellite last year. It was a huge explosion on the pad even before the launch. And we want to give the passengers, the private space explorers, like we call it, a better safety and security inside the rockets. Yeah.
What is Israel doing on this front? Because we know Israel is sort of a technological leader in several categories. How big of a priority is it? And is that specifically, is space travel for the average citizen something that's in focus?
No, not in Israel, but Israel has all the capabilities of designing, building, manufacturing all the satellites. We have a small satellite launch vehicle, and we can launch some of the satellites from Israel. Basically, most of the satellites are remote sensing for security purposes. And some new tech companies are also active in the field of very small satellites. And we have a waiting satellite, small satellite that was built by high school students now at the Cape, waiting to be launched mid-April.
So take us through what those satellites actually do. Take us through a little bit what those satellites actually do, because there's a whole range of categories and different purposes.
Satellites could do a lot of things. Communication satellites, of course, navigation. We all use GPS, and the Europeans and Chinese has their own navigation system. And
espionage.
Of course,
Right.
we call it remote sensing. We can take pictures from space, and the application
diplomatic
could be whatever you like. It could be security, it could be environmental, and so on. And of course, we have a whole range of exploration satellites, space telescopes, probes to Mars, to Moon, and other areas of the solar system and beyond.
What would you say the priority then is for Israel, if we're not looking at space travel for citizens, of all of those categories, looking into the future, take us 5 years from now, what is the goal, what are the priorities?
Well, it depends. We are focusing on the application sector. So remote sensing to improve the resolution, to add some more colors to the payloads, to the cameras of the satellites, to improve the lifting capabilities of the launch vehicle. Those are part of Israel's priorities.
We've heard a lot, we actually heard from the Obama administration also in the past, that maybe space has sort of fallen off in terms of priorities across the board. I mean, when we hear the conversations about the economy, about immigration, about terror, space is not in the conversation like it was several decades ago. Is that your view from sort of inside?
No, but space is becoming more a regular thing. We have, in average, between 85 to 90 launches per year. So every week we have a launch somewhere from this country or another. So we got used to it. It's not the Apollo era in which every launch was unique. And last night, Israel time, the launch of SpaceX was a historic event, and of course we are speaking about it today. But it's in the media, it's not so highlighted as it used to be. In a way, it's a good thing. It's a good thing that we are getting used to hear about space exploration, space missions, and so on. It will all change when we'll get back to Mars, to the Moon, and then to Mars with humans.
Certainly, that's Elon Musk's ultimate goal. Give us, just before we let you go, a timeline. If you were your best guess of when the first safe flight will be.
It depends on the destination. To Earth orbit, we already had some space tourists. But if we are speaking about traveling to the Moon with no landing, it could be done next year, like Elon Musk said, and NASA will launch its own spacecraft next year also, perhaps with astronauts.
Elon Musk says 8 years to Mars. We'll see if he hits that goal.
Well, so if things get tough here, there are always alternatives coming soon. Sam Chester, Tal Inbar, thanks very much for this.